Hey everyone, 80s 20, and here we go with a third, well, the last, I guess. Yeah, the last Four Lands report on the first trilogy of Shannara books. There's gonna be plenty more to come whenever I get around to all the other ones, which who knows when that'll be. But this one, we're going over Wishsong, which I finished reading a few days ago, actually. I just hadn't gotten around to recording because couldn't find a good day off. But yeah, this is a good one. This is a really good one. At least it's still all in my head because I really enjoyed it. Also, I actually didn't know, because one thing that I know about series, usually when we move from story to story, or I don't know how to describe it, but like there's always like a generational leap of a few generations, you know, however you can say that, because like the first book, Sword, followed Shay. The second book followed his grandson Wil, and this one follows Wil's children. So it's like not too far, and I actually didn't know that because Wil is in this book for a bit. He doesn't do much because he's not the main character, but it just, I was like, huh, I forgot about that, because to my knowledge there's only one generation that is single, and that is at least that I remembered, and that is Voyage. I don't know the name of the main character in Voyage, but I do know that when we go to Hydrua, which is the next one, we follow that guy's son. But unlike this one, his dad and his mom actually have their own plot line that they go on, which I thought was awesome, because those two are some of my favorite characters. The from Voyage, who also get to have more adventures in Hydrua, which I think is cool. But this was a bit surprising to see. I'm like, oh, this was just one generation. They didn't skip a bunch, which is totally fine and understandable for reasons that'll become clear. Anyway, Wishsong follows Brin and Jair Ohmsford, the children of Wil and Eritrea, from Elfstones, and how they both, because of the ending of Elfstones and Wil's use of the Elfstones, have been born with magic. Specifically, one that they call the Wishsong, which functions differently for both of them. In essence, they sing and it does weird magical things. For Brin, it does real magical things, which the example that they gave at the beginning was changing the leaves on the tree, like the color. Just as a minor example, it gets crazier later. And for Jair, his create illusions. So hers affect reality, his don't. They make it look like that, but they don't. Which I thought was a really neat distinction to have, and much like the latter half of Sword and pretty much all of Elfstones, this book also follows two distinct plot lines, since Brin and Jair go on separate adventures, and they stay separated for like the entirety of the book. It also reminds me of how in Sword, when Shay goes off on his own, even though it wasn't an intentional choice, and he meets Panemon Creel and Keltset, by the end of the story, he's all by himself when he reunites with everyone else, so no one meets Panemon Creel or Keltset until the ending. But that's just him and Flick who meet Panemon, and it's implied since the story ends real quick. For this one, it's actually the same thing. Jair has his own traveling companions, Brin has hers. By the time they reunite at the end, Jair has no traveling companions, so there's no one to meet. But yes. I thought this was neat. Like, it was... Oh man, I'm trying to think of how best to start this. I guess highlighting both of their quests. Because of course, the reason it all starts is because Alanon comes by to just visit. And he specifically only needs Brin. He doesn't really need Jair. Because Brin's wish song, is real. Whereas Jair's... he doesn't have need for illusions. And I think it's funny that when I was first listening to the book and Alanon was describing what it is that he is facing this time, or what the problem is, it's a book, funny, called the Ildatch. And it's funny, when he said that, I'm like, oh, that's a good name for an evil book. But yes, they the source of the Warlock Lord's power was, I think, never really specified. It's just that he read a bunch of ancient books while he was in Paranor, Brona, and his practice of all their magic and studying of it subverted him, as they like to say, and made him evil. And one of the books he studied was the Ildatch, this ancient book of all sorts of evil sorcery and dark magic. It also created the Skullbearers, and now it creates these new ones called Mordwraiths. And while Skullbearers can walk, I mean, Skullbearers fly mainly, Mordwraiths walk. And Alanon wanted to go and destroy the book, obviously, as soon as he found out where it was, but he can't. He needs Brin to get to it and destroy it. And so that's why he comes to see her, and after like an evening, she decides to go with him, along with this book's Lee character, Roan Lee. I was like, oh yeah, because there wasn't a Lee in the second book, so it's nice to have one here. They're pretty consistent with how many Lees there are in future books. I'm pretty sure. I know for certain the next series has a Lee in it too. I don't remember his name though. After they leave, crazy events happen that kind of forced Jair to leave as well. And his quest, he initially just wants to go to Lee, somewhere to be protected, because a bunch of gnomes and a Mordwraith have come to their home looking for Alanon specifically, because they were being tracked. And eventually, through different events, he gets caught up, captured by a gnome, taken to a bunch of people, rescued by a guy, and then he goes to Cullhaven. During that course of events, he's given a mission by the King of the Silver River to purify the Silver River, because the Mordwraiths are poisoning it. So at that point, Jair had taken the Elfstones from his home, something that Wil had hidden. And I remember thinking, wait, but if he's taking them, then he can't use them, because in order for the Elfstones to be used, the person who owns them currently needs to give them up to someone, which is why Wil was able to use them in the second book when Shay gave them to him. If Jair's taking them, then and the main reason Jair takes them is because, well, I think on the one hand he thinks he can make them work, but on the other hand it's also because of all the creatures in his house that he doesn't want them to find it. He doesn't think that's a good idea to let them have it. But no, it turns out he absolutely can't use them, and he gives them up pretty early in the book to the King of the Silver River. And I was like, oh, we're not going to get any Elfstones in this book. I thought they were like in every book, but I guess it makes sense. I think Shay didn't use them a lot back in his book, and Wil also didn't until the very end, when he used them like crazy to kill the Reaper. So I'm just surprised that we went from some Elfstone usage to absolutely none of it. Instead, Jair is given silver dust, I forget what it's called, but like a seeing stone. It's like if he sings to it, he can see Brin. He can see where she is. And then I think his last gift is, I'm trying to remember what it was. I think it was power for his companions, or the ability to make his wish sung real once, or both. I don't remember. I thought it was 3 gifts, but I'm trying to remember like which, because the King of Silver gives him 3 things in exchange for the 3 Elfstones. Yes, and so that's the quest. So, what's her name? I keep getting Brin and Jair mixed up in my head for some reason. Brin, Roan, and Alanon are off to the evil swamp. I forgot what it was called, and I was just looking at it. The Maelmord, to reach the book that's hidden within the Ildatch, while Jair and his companions are headed to Heaven's Well to purify the Silver River. And so that's our 2 adventures. That's the thing, that it's funny because Brin does not have a lot of people on her story, even though she does get more later. She meets a few different ones, because it's just her, Alanon, and Roan for the beginning of it. Whereas Jair gets a bunch of buddies, because it starts with just him, and then he gets captured by Slanter, a gnome who was tracking him. And eventually, while he's in custody of a bunch of gnomes, he gets freed by the weapons master Garrett Jax, who's like my favorite character in this book. And he follows a specific archetype like Steejans and Balnor before him. were both just really active physical powerhouses, and Garrett Jackson specific is crazy powerful, even though he is just a normal dude. He's got mastery, as his like title implies, over pretty much any kind of weapon, and he's like his own legend basically. And when they get to Cullhaven, after Jair tells the dwarves what his goal is, what the task he was given by the King of Silver River is, and Al-Anon coming to see him, or his sister specifically, they line up a new crew for him to help him get to Heaven's Well. Which, in addition to Slanter continuing to being forced to come along, there's also Garrett Jax, of course. So that makes 3. And then Edain Elissadil, Borderman Helt, and a dwarf Elbforker. And then the 6 of them go off to Heaven's Well. Which I was like, oh yeah, Edain Elissadil is Ander Elissadil's son, since he's currently king. And I do think it's funny that they've mentioned the Federation again very briefly, because we get to Capal, a dwarf fortress, at one point on the crew's adventure up to Heaven's Well, and it's being besieged. The dwarves are fighting against a bunch of gnomes, and there's always like who is anyone coming to help? And of course, the elven reinforcements, because the Westland and the Eastland are really far apart, so elven forces will take forever to get there. There's some bordermen there. It's mostly dwarves, and then it's like, yeah, they're not really counting on any more Federation reinforcements, because once again, just like the last book, very useless they are. It seems to be. They're so caught up in their politics and their whatever that they never want to help anyone else when they need it, which is great, awesome. Love it. Yeah, I was actually looking at the map in the book, because I was like, where were they? Because it's interesting that the book, and I think it was like this one, yeah, in like the individual ones, it only has the map for like the center, but it has an additional page specifically outlining the Eastland. Which I was like, So obviously, the first book takes place in like the center of the world. Like, it covers the Southland, the Borderland, and then it goes into... That's really where it stops, because like the only other person who goes farther after they abandon their mission at Paranor is Shay, who just goes north. The second book takes place mostly in the Westland. Like, they have to grab people from the Southland, and I think wherever Storlock is, I don't actually know where it is on this map, and take them to the Eastland, Westland, where they spend most of the story. And this one is the Eastland, where they go into in great detail. This thing is interesting that none of the Westland is mapped out here. Hell, the map in the book doesn't even have Arbalon on it. It just has like the edge of the Westland and the Valley of Ren, and the Myrmidon River. That's it. And I was like, really? That's it? Whereas the Eastland is so detailed. I can see all the places that everybody went to, through the lower Anar and to the upper Anar. You can see the start place of Cullhaven, Capal, the Citadellin, Dunfierin, Greymark, the Maelmord, Heaven's Well, Olden Moor, Toffer Ridge, Darkland Reach, the Grimpon, Hearthstone, the Rooker Line, the Charred Rush, and the Pass of Jade. Oh, and the Wolfstag, the Wolfstag Mountains. It's all there. I'm just like, yeah, no, that was all the, which makes it look like a really long trip that they took. I wish I kept better track of like how long that adventure took. Let's see it here. And they started, like, Jair's crew started down here at Cullhaven and had to go all the way up here to Heaven's Well. And Brin's crew started... Well, everyone started at Shady Vale, all the way over here. And I believe they went by the Rainbow Lake and through there. But instead of going past Cullhaven, where everyone expected them to go, Al-Anon had to take them up to the Valley of Shale over here instead. Go north, because he needed to meet with Bremen. Oh, there's Storlock. I didn't see that. It's right under the Rab Plains. Look, it's really small. But yeah, after that, they then headed through Storlock, and I don't know where they went after that to get over to... Did they go through the Pass of Jade? I think they did, because the Charred Rush is there, and I know that that's an important spot for later in the story. Yeah, and then the Rooker Line, Hearthstone, the Grim Pond, Top Ridge, Gildenmore. Yeah, that's where what's her face Brin went, all the way from Shady Vale up and across, whereas what's his face Jair went down here. You don't know where he went after that. I think they might have crossed the Mist Marsh because they fought a monster in there. Just followed the Silver River all the way through. Yeah, that's really cool. Accurately map it out. I do wish we had a map for the Westland, because I would have liked to see the exact route for the events of Elfstones, and even to see just the layout of the area with where Arbalon is, Hallus Cut, the Sarandanan, Whirl Run, the Break Line, all that stuff, because it's coming up again in another book that I'm reading, so it would be nice to know. Still. But yes, their adventures go on, and I think one thing I think I knew this was going to happen in this book, but I wasn't sure 100% until we got into it. But yeah, this is the book where Alanon dies, and he dies very early, like a lot earlier than I thought. I think this book is 50 something chapters, could be wrong. He dies like 20, I think by chapter 25, somewhere around there, like halfway through, and that's because on their way to the Charred Rush, I think it's before they reach it, they get to a valley and they encounter a Jakira, an ancient evil monster, and Alanon fights it, and he's able to kill it by shooting druid fire straight into its mouth and like blowing it up from the inside, but it also wounded him throughout the fight, which was a great fight, by the way. It was a really awesome fight. And just like all of the druids, at least the few that I can remember, he gets taken by the Shade of Bremen into the water, and he's gone. And then that leaves Brin and Roan all on their own for a nice leg of the adventure as they go through the Rooker Line Trading Center and they get to Hearthstone before they meet their other allies for the end of the book. Cogleen, a really old, crazy dude. Kimber Bow, a young, what do we call her? Like a tracker? She's Cogleen's granddaughter. Like, he found her and adopted her and raised her. And the Whisper, a giant moorcat that is their best buddy. I know every time Whisper got in trouble in this book, I'm like, he better not die. So I was happy that Whisper made it through. He's just a giant black cat, basically, with bright blue eyes, who can like blend in with the surroundings and disappear when he wants to, and no one can find him. Yes, and I think that's it. Yeah, because the only other characters I can think of that are of note are the bad guys that Jair meets, with like Stithis, a lizard dude who tries to capture Jair and keep him because he wants his magic, or his magic says he says it, because he's a lizard. There's a lot of in everything he says. Yeah, I also like the fight at Capal. I thought that was awesome when the bad guys, when the Mordray summoned the Kraken to destroy the fortress. I also think it's funny that was something that is never hit on for the entire rest of the book after it happens, because Jair's party gets separated a lot. Before they even get into Capal, they get separated, and they have to find their way into the fortress through different routes. And after Capal is destroyed by the Kraken, they all get separated again. And what's his name? Jair specifically gets taken off to it was Dunfierin, right? Dunfierin, the prison's over there, and he's imprisoned by Stithis until he can convince him or force him to give up his magics. Which he can't really do that. His magic is in his voice. There's really no way that someone can take his voice, you know? I mean, maybe not. But, you know, Stithis is whatever. Dude's crazy. And, what else is there that happens as of note? Oh yeah, what I was saying about the fortress falling, and the reason that they fought so hard to keep that fortress, dwarves, in addition to just it's their fortress, of course they're going to try to prevent the gnomes from taking it, is that it controls the river in that area. I think it's the Silidellin that it's on, and they can sabotage the dams and whatever, open it up and flood the entire land south of them as a result. And by the end of that battle, even with the Kraken gone, I don't think it's dead. It might have died, but it's never said what happened to it after Garrett Jax attacks it. The gnomes just control it, and we never go back there for the rest of the story since they have to move forward. And by the ending, we don't even know what happened, you know. Which, speaking of, it just reminds me that the only reason they're able to go on this adventure, because believe me, if Wil was there at the home, I think it would have been nearly impossible to get for Al-Anon to get Brin to go with him. Wil had left with Eritrea on like a 2-week trip south to help a bunch of villages, you know, because he's still a healer. And so he's absent for the entire book. And of course, the book doesn't take place over the course of 2 weeks. There's a lot more time that it takes for everybody to get to where they need to go and then to come back. I think the story with Slanter is probably like one of my favorites. It's just a gnome that captures a Jair. He's just such a crusty fellow with like a really bad attitude. He was talked into all of this. He didn't want to be in it, but he keeps tagging along, and he does care as much as he tries. He's one of those characters who tries to put off and just be very ornery and like combative and stuff, but he sticks with it throughout the whole book, and he's one of the few characters who survives the whole book. So, you know, good on you, Slanter. I liked him. Him and Jair's relationship was really fun. I think the rest of Jair's crew is also really cool. Elvorker, Dane Lissadil, and Helt are just consummate professionals. Just like the company from the first book, you know, Balinor, Durin and Dale, and Menyon, and everybody, Hendel, like they're all just capable. So when they get into fights, they know what to do. You know, they know how to survive, and whether they can fight or they have to retreat. And they take out a lot of people. Once again, Garrett Jax, I think, nearly kills a Kraken on his own just because he's that good. And that's like his whole thing about why he wants to go on this adventure. In addition to, I think the curiosity gets to him, is mainly that at the start of it, at the time that the Silver River, because the king of the Silver River visits Jair in his dream. At the same time, whether it was the king or someone else, Garrett Jax has his dream about fighting like a fiery creature that is apparently supposed to be like the greatest fight of his life. And because he's so good as the weapons master and all the things he does, no one ever really gives him a challenge. So he's looking for that challenge wherever he can find it. And if this adventure promises him that challenge, he's all in. You know, he's like, I'll do it. I think one thing I wanted to mention, which is kind of jumping to the end, but you know, there's just a bunch of events that happen back and forth, is the book, the Ildatch, when it starts talking to Brin, because of course it can talk. It's a ancient evil book. Talking is kind of the territory. It says, "Know me, I am the Ildatch, the book of the dark magic, born of the age of fairy. I am older than the elves, as old as the king of the Silver River, as ancient as the word." I was like, what? I didn't expect to hear about that here. Only 3 books into this series, and he's mentioned, and it's capitalized, the word. And I was like, man, that is deep. That is pulling back. I actually looked up on Wikipedia, and should probably open it up now so that I could remember exactly. Because one thing I said I wanted to do was read the books in release order, and it's become very apparent that I will not be doing that. Because First King did not come out after this trilogy. So I'm kind of like, oops. I see, here are the dates. Okay. Yeah, so Sword was 1977, Elfstones was 82, and Wishsong was 85. First King was 96. First King was 11 years after Wishsong. Before First King, the entire Heritage series came out. So yeah, technically that's where I should have read First King. I should have gotten the Heritage of Shannara. Did I say trilogy? It's not a trilogy, it's 4 books. Because those came out 90, 91, 92, and 93. And then First King was 96. And then The Word and the Void was 97, 98, and 99. Which is weird. I thought the Word and the Void books were older. because they were retconned into Shannara, into being the origin. But he mentioned the word right here, so it was already established that that was a thing. Just that they haven't gone into it yet, so I'm excited for that. Which, you know, the word is like this old sacred order that fights against the demons of the void, and their agents that do that are the Knights of the Word, the ones with the staffs that shoot white fire or whatever. Which very cool. I like those guys. I only know of 4 different Knights of the Word, but I'm really excited to meet them all again because I think it's a cool position. I thought that was something interesting. I think the ways that Brin begins to use the wish song and later in the book is really cool. It's almost like she turns into Black Canary in some ways, you know, because it's in her voice, and she starts to use it in darker ways towards the end of the book because of happenstance and circumstances. They force her when she's in trouble that she can do like screams that just shatter creatures. Like there's a spider gnome that gets like completely twisted by her, and then there are Mordwraiths that when she's with the book and it's forcing her, or like it's trying to subvert her, she's literally able to kill these things and disintegrate them and leave nothing, not even ashes. Because usually when they're destroyed by either Roan's enchanted sword or Elfstones, who destroy dark creatures in previous book, they get reduced to ash. But she like atomizes them. Not even dust is left when she destroys them, which is crazy. And Alnon says multiple times throughout the book while he's alive that the wish song is like power that he's never seen. Which I think it's also interesting that he says when he comes to them in Shady Vale that he requires the wish song to help him destroy the book. Brin is the one who named it, so I'm like, how does he know that? I mean, yeah, I guess he's Alnon, so he knows everything. But it gets me thinking, because it was a hereditary thing that they were born with as a result of Wil's use of the Elfstones. I'm trying to remember if the wish song remains a thing in their families as well, and Brin and Jair's descendants, whoever takes up the lead in future books, in Heritage, Voyage, High Druid. I wonder if it ever comes up. I think Grianne, if anyone was capable of using it, it'd be Grianne, but I actually don't remember too much about her abilities, so I'll have to wait to see what she's actually capable of. Yeah, there was a lot of cool stuff. I think one of the things that got me, that I thought was interesting, well, there's 2 things that I really want to bring up. One is, I forgot, I just saw the name. Something about Roan? Well, one thing that they did while they were with Stithis, because after Jair's captured by Stithis, everyone comes together to rescue him, led by Slanter of all people. And when they rescued Jair, they also take Stithis into custody to use him to try to get past Greymark's defenses and get in there so they could go up to Croag and go to Heaven's Well. But he takes them through these caves of night, these like almost pitch black caves. He has his own magic, so he can summon a light to help them get through. And it is home to just a very strange, I don't even know if you could call it a creature. It's almost like the caves themselves are the creature, but there are these things in there called procs. And I was like, what are these? They look like holes in the ground, but it's more like they're mouths on the ground made of stone. It's like the stone opens up and closes like a mouth just going rap, rap, rap. And like they're always grinding against themselves, and they're just all over the floor in these caves. And I'm just like, oh, that sounds terrible. And yeah, Stithis falls into one after an altercation where he tries to take Jair again. And he gets crushed to death, and I'm just like, ew. Just the way they describe it and how everyone, it's like, and how Jair's trying to ignore the sounds that they make. It's just like, what are these things? It's like, it's such a bizarre, terrible creature. I was like, not happy about it at all. They're like, I don't know what the other point I wanted to bring up was. That was one thing that just stood out to me. But I guess another thing is to talk about Roan and his obsession with his sword, because he has the same sword of Lee that Menyon used in Sword of Shannara. thanks to Alanon, he dips it in the waters of the Valley of Shale, and it like enhances the sword. It makes the blade black, and it gives it magic defying properties, so it can like negate magic attacks and kill Mordray very easily. Roan kills quite a few in multiple fights, which is really cool. Really happy about it. And then I forgot Cogleen, the crazy old guy. Just reading his dialogue, especially with Scott Brick's narration, he comes off as so funny. Just the way that he constantly dances. He'll dance over to Brin, say something really jerkish and mean, and then like spin away and go do something else. It's like the guy's lost it, and it's really, really amusing. He's an amusing character, Cogleen. Yeah, I think I'm trying to remember like the final, because it's funny, I remember the final stretch of chapters relatively well from Jair's perspective. I did not remember what happens with Brin after she finds the book, or how she destroys it, or what happens. But the final assault on Greymark as Jair's crew is trying to get to Heaven's Well is kind of crazy, because they end up, I just think it's so funny and upsetting that when they get into a specific room, they get attacked by like this flying creature that they don't even know what it is. It winds up poisoning Helt before they throw it before he throws it away, and then they like leave the room and lock the door behind them. And I think one of them even asked the other, "What was that?" I don't know. There's something so amusing about that, because the creature doesn't come up again. It was just in that room. The rest of the time in Greymark, they're fighting like an endless army of gnomes, because that's where all the gnomes are based. But yeah, no. The crazy thing, I learned about this from just reading like fun facts. I don't even know when the first time I heard about it was, but Terry Brooks had planned back in Sword to kill the entire company, and notes from his editor, Lester Del Rey, convince him not to. And then in the end, the only character of the company from Cullhaven that died in the first book was Hendel. But in this book, Wishsong, he kills the entire company that goes with Jair. Well, 4 of them out of 6, so that's pretty much everybody. Yeah, Helt gets taken out because he's poisoned, and he hands back to hold off the gnome army. And then Edain, Elissadil, and Elvorker get injured, and they have to stay back. They can't keep up with everybody else as they continue going to Heaven's Well to hold off the gnomes as well once they overpower every location, because they're just coming out of everywhere. And then Garrett Jax hangs back to fight another Jackira that's like the last guardian before they reach Heaven's Well. And he recognizes that it's what was in his vision. He saw it as a monster of fire, and Jackiras are covered in red fur. But the thing that really sells it is when Jackira screams, that's the exact same sound he heard in his dream, vision, whatever you want to call it. And so he stays back to fight it. It's unfortunate we don't get to see that fight, because I am infinitely curious as how Garrett Jax killed it. Because it took Alanon everything. Like, the thing killed Alanon. And he had to directly shove his hands into its mouth to blow it up from the inside out. I have no idea how Garrett Jax managed to kill it. But much like Jair, I have no doubt in my mind that Garrett Jax did kill it. Just that it killed him too. But yes, it was kind of crazy that his entire party dies. And I think, once again, I mentioned this briefly back in the previous book. And Elissadil, like throughout Elfstones, he loses his brother before they're able to reconcile. He loses his what is Amberly to him? Sister? Is she a generation removed? I don't remember, but she is family, and he does love her. He loses her, she becomes the Elcris. And Eventide dies at the very end of the book, his dad, and he's gone too. And then in this book, his firstborn, Crown Prince, Edain Elissadil, also dies in Greymark. And I'm just like, why? It's like, I assume Ander probably has other kids, but that was his firstborn. And as we know from Elfstones, I believe Eventide losing his firstborn was a big problem. Ayn. So it's just, man. Ander Elissadil's not even in this story. He just mentioned, and he's still like taking hits. It's crazy. But I did like the final battle of the book, which was between Brin and Jair, because the book is controlling Brin and she can't like wrest herself away from it. And Jair is he uses his magic to basically like teleport from Heaven's Well down into the Melmord to confront her and try to save her, free her from the book. And he does everything. He throws every kind of illusion he can think of at her. He even illusions up Al-Anon to try to knock her out of it, and she's just destroying the entire area trying to get at Jair because her wish song is just crazy powerful. He's able to do it by reminding her of herself and showing her visions of her life, their lives, and everything that is able to get through to her. And then she throws. I'm amazed at how strong she is. And again, I mean, the book is old, so maybe it's just really tattered. I mean, it's an ancient book, but it's an ancient magic book. But she damages it greatly just by throwing it on the ground with strength I don't even think she knew she had. And then she atomizes it by using the wish song on it, which I'm like, yep, that'll do it. I did like that right before it gets destroyed, even the book starts panicking when it realizes it's fucked. That's something I really enjoy. And then they all go home, they all say goodbye to each other. But like I said, because Jair's entire crew is dead, there's hardly anyone to say goodbye to. It's amazing for Brin and Jair being siblings. They don't spend a lot of the story together at all. Though I guess it makes sense with their separate plot lines. And even in the ending, there's hardly any crosstalk, because Jair says goodbye to Slanter, and then Brin says goodbye to Kimber and Cogleen and Whisper. And Roan and Brin say goodbye to them, and then they all go home. Which I did think the ending for this book, I kind of wish once again there was a little more to it, but I don't think it was that bad. Because like after the Ildatch is destroyed and everyone reunites, I did think it was funny Slanter's reaction to reuniting with them and seeing what Brin's crew is. Like he sees Brin, and then he sees the young girl with all the knives, the ranger Kimber Bow, and he sees the crazy old man Cogleen, and then the giant disappearing cat Whisper, and he's like, what a strange group. And I'm like, yeah, you're one to talk, Slanter. Yeah, they go back to the valley near the charred rush where Al-Anon died, and she speaks with him one last time. It's really funny because the way that Al-Anon talks, it's like this is the end of all things. Like, the dark magic is gone from the world. You'll never have to use the wish song again. There will never be another druid. The lands are safe, but maybe, he implies, in some distant generation, someone will be called on again for something. Who knows? It's like a very vague implication before he then leaves. And it's just like, yeah, of course, because it didn't end after these 3 books. There's a whole bunch more. I still wonder why it is the Heritage series is 4 books. I'm really curious about that, so I'm excited to get to it and see what's up with that. But I've read Heritage before. I distinctly remember that story too. I know the characters from that one are in my head already, but I am curious. Like, I'm like 4 books, because nothing else is like, everything else is either a trilogy or 2 books. I think that's like the only one that's 4. Although I guess this one could be 4 if you count First King into it. But yes, I did like that they go home, and their parents were supposed to be gone for 2 weeks, but because the King in the Silver River, I believe that's what they imply, visited them to tell them something about something or other, they actually wind up staying down there for much longer. They say their work takes them longer, but I think it was to the point that they were there the whole book. They get back to their home, Wil and Eritrea, like right before Brin, Jair, and Roan come back. And that's how Jair finds out, because the King of Silver River put the Elfstones back in their home. And the ending of the story implies that Brin and Jair and Roan are going to tell their not their parents, because they're not Roan's parents, but Wil and Eritrea everything. And like, I would have loved to hear Wil's reaction to it, like legitimately, because I know he would have been upset, but also I wonder what he would think of Al-Anon's death and everything that happened. But I guess that's what you have your imagination for, just to think about how that conversation went. But yeah, that's the end of the book. I thought it was interesting because like they directly tell you that the Borderman Helt and Garrett Jax died, but they don't say that for Edane, Elissadil, and Elforiker in the moment. So I was like, they just mentioned that they're surrounded by gnomes. But no, in the ending, they actually do say that after everything's done, Brin and Jair and whoever is still alive goes back into Greymark to retrieve the bodies of Helt, Edana Lysadil, and Elvorkr to properly bury them. Whereas Garrett Jax, because he died in Heaven's Well, and the Croag crumbled after the destruction of the Maelmord, there's no way to reach him, although as Jared decides, that's a good thing. Like, just to leave him somewhere that no one else could possibly get to. Which is like, that's pretty fitting for Garrett Jax. I think the other thing I wanted to mention, which I thought was interesting, because for these books at least, we don't really delve too much into romance. There's a lot more of it in Heritage, if I remember correctly, with the Lee of that book, I believe, which is funny because it always seems to be the Lee. It was like that in Sword with Menyon Lee and Cheryl Ravenlock, and it's this way in this book with Roan Lee and Brin Ohmsford. But in the second book, it was the Wil Amberley and Eritrea kind of thing. And in First King, it's Tay. It's the Gerald Tay and the Priya thing. But for this book, what's interesting, it's usually stuff that's like implied or like that it develops as the story goes. For this one, it was kind of interesting because like Roan and Brin are already in love from like the beginning of the book. Like, I'm like, are they? After like their first conversations they have early on before the adventure starts, and then you find out a few chapters like, no, yeah, they are. There. Okay, interesting. It's a joining of the Lee and Ohmsford lines. But yeah. Wishsong was good, very entertaining. There's some really cool stuff in there too. Like, nothing is gonna top all the action scenes from Elfstone. Like the war scenes are just so cool. But the fight in Capal and the showdown with the Jakira, the mad rush through Greymark and all the gnomes, and of course the final with Brin and Jair are really cool. And the roads leading there were also very, very good. Just all the different legs of the adventure. There was just a lot of interesting and cool stuff. I do think it's interesting that 3 books so far, and I am reading First King, and obviously that whole thing I think takes, well, not whole thing. I don't think much of it, if any of it, takes place in the Southland. But we haven't been to Lee yet, and I don't know if we ever go there. Like, I think the only time that they were there was very briefly in Sword when they went to get Menyon, when Shay and Flick went to get him. I'm really curious if there's a book in the series that they spend a bit more time in Lee. But I guess we'll see when that happens. So yeah. Last note I'm going to leave on. I had planned, or I had thought that maybe it would be cool to do like a reaction series to the television show Legends of Shannara that aired on Spike TV. From like, gosh, how old was that? I don't know. Let me look that up. And I was going to do it. Like I said last time I talked about it, the only thing I know about that show is that it is the one comment that I saw of someone saying it wasn't good. And the only thing I remember is that it was 2 seasons, and it aired. I said the Legends of Shannara. The Shannara Chronicles is what it's called. Legends is a book series. It's 2 book series. Okay, it aired from 2016 to 2017. Apparently released on MTV and Spike. It was 2 seasons, and the only thing I knew about it is that season 1 ends at the same place as the book, as Elfstone's ends. Amberley becomes the Elchris, the demons are sealed away victory. So I was like, I mean, that sounds correct. But I went back and I read the synopsis of the final episode again, and I was like, hang on a minute. Nothing else I'm reading sounds right. Like, Amberley becoming the Elchris, sure, but why is everything else weird? So then I moved forward and I read the first episode of season 2, because I was like, so what happens? Where are they going to go after they resolve the conflict? And I'm like, reading that, I'm like, what the fuck is this? And then I went back and I just started reading the summaries for all the episodes. I'm like, this is the shittiest thing I've ever read. Like, wow, that is just blatantly not what Elfstone's is. Like, this thing does not follow Elfstone's at all. Like, it's not even close. Like, there's hardly anything in this that I read just by the summaries, at least for the first season, that has to do with Elfstones. Like, Maybe big picture, sure, but no, this is terrible. And so I'm like, no. I'm glad that I looked up ahead of time because I think the show is probably like 40-minute episode blocks. Yeah, running time 43 minutes. 20 episodes. That's a lot of time I would sacrifice to watch what sounds like absolute garbage. So no, I have no idea why the fuck they made this show like this. It's all incorrect. All sounds horrible. None of it makes any sense. And in season 2, just randomly inserting the Sword of Shannara, Garrett Jax, Cogleen and Slanter, and all these other characters into like its own original story, which still sounds like shit. Marith is in there too, and I'm just like, yeah, no, this is stupid. This is really dumb. I'm glad that I ended up looking in ahead of time and reading it, because I'm not doing that. Yes, I'll be happy with these. I don't need TV show adaptations or movies of these. In my head, I remember back in the day when I first read these books, I thought that would be cool. But nowadays, I would rather no one ever take a second look at these. No producers out there look at these and think, yeah, we should adapt them. Like, no, don't touch them. I don't want it. You'll screw it up. They will. But yes, so that negative note aside, trilogy done. I'm currently reading First King, even though I shouldn't be. I should be reading Heritage next, but I don't have Heritage because I forgot. I didn't look up ahead of time which ones took place next, so the next books I want to grab, I want to add to the collection, are the 4 books in the Heritage series and Angel Fire East. Because I think I'll be able to read Angel Fire East after the Heritage series as well. Yes, I will be. Cool. Awesome. Good. Then that's what I'll do. Which the Heritage series is the Scions of Shannara, the Druid of Shannara, Elf Queen, and Talismans. I'm looking forward to those books because they introduce Walker Bow, which I think is my sister's favorite character. I really liked him too, and I'm really interested to just meet him again. So that'll be cool. Anyway, that's all for this one. So until next time, everyone, hasta.